والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
We now invite our brother Muntazar Naqvi to come and recite Marsiya for us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. सादात करबला सादात करबला चहलुम को करबला में जब आई वो बीबियां सादा کربلا کچھ بیویاں یہاں ہیں کچھ بیویاں وہاں کرتی ہوئی فغاں بکھری ہوئی تھی مقتل سرور میں جا بجا سادات کربلا ایک بی بی دشت خونی میں جاتی ہے نہر پر کہتی بچشم تر ارے عباس دینے آئی ہوں پرسا سکینہ کا سادات کربلا ارے گھٹ گھٹ کے لاڈلی تیری زنداں میں مر گئی تربت وہیں بنی ارے بھیا وہ قید سے نہ ہوئی مر کے بھی رہا سادات کربلا اکبر کی قبر پہ ہوئی یوں لو اکبر کی قبر پہ ہوئی یوں لیلا نوحگر دیکھا نہ سال بھر ارے آئی ہوں قید شام سے اب ہو کہ میں رہا سادات کربلا بانو یہ بین کرتی تھیں اے میرے بے زباں ماں ڈھونڈے اب کہاں بتلا دے ہے کہاں میرا اصغر اے کربلا سادات کربلا قربان تیرے اے میرے ماں جائے بے وطن مجبور تھی بہن ارے زندہ میں مجھ سے تیری امانت ہوئی جدا سادات کربلا چہلم کو کربلا میں جب آئیں وہ بیبیاں سادات کربلا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. Welcome Molana for this to continue with the interpretation of these verses in our day and times. We welcome with three salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من يومنا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد وقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في قرآن الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون صلوات. Bismillah. I'm glad that Brother Abu Savant introduced the conversation and brought us back into this mode of remembering what I'd initiated. And this particular ayat, not only do we have an application to our present time with it, but its explanation itself is so important and paramount for us to understand how we fight off the shaitan as we move further in both the interpretation and our own life as we develop it. The ayat says, Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adama, O son of Adam, O son of Adam, have I not made a covenant with you? Have we not made a covenant with you, O children of Adam, that you will not worship the shaitan and la ta'budu the shaitan, that you will not worship the shaitan. Innahu lakum aduwwun mubin, for he is the most evil, the biggest enemy of yours. Wa ana ibaduni, and worship me. Hada siratum mustaqim, for this is the straight path. وَلَقَدْ ضَلَّ مِنْكُمْ جِبِلًّا, that, and certainly he has led and led astray numerous people amongst you. أَفَلَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْقِلُونَ, what? You do not know that? You do not understand that? Do you not realize that? In other words, the last bit, a little bit into our conversation first, that we see throughout history, many people who have gone astray, they should be an example for us. Ibrat, it's called Ibrat, a learning process. The last ayat is saying what? What? In other words, in a patronizing manner, in a kind of pushing you. What, you don't understand this? It's like somebody saying, I've told you this 5 million times. What, you don't understand what I'm telling you? This is what the Quran is saying. That shaitan has misled and taken astray millions and millions of people in front of us. What, can't you see that? Don't you understand that? It's really important that the Quran is pushing us to realize for ourselves that we don't need to have an example right in front of us. History has shown, all these buildings which we see empty. You may see these programs on TV of lost civilizations, and they suddenly say, well, this is a lost civilization, but we don't even have any paperwork to even suggest, from any writing to suggest, any prints on the walls to suggest in these civilizations how they made these things. How did that happen? Why did that happen? These are the examples for us. There is history in Islam which talks about Hazrat Nuh, Hazrat Nuh's generation being a second generation after Hazrat Adam's generation. In other words, the whole lifeline of people was destroyed when the floods of Nuh came. So really and truly, every single thing that came into existence, Hazrat Nuh, was a new generation of people, a new reality. So yes, all these civilizations were washed out, yet still when the rivers and the lakes and the waters came down, these things remained as monuments, like Petra in Jordan, for example, or places in Aztec places in the north. I mean, in North South America, places where you see, I don't know whether you watch some of these civilization programs, that you see these civilizations building blocks of things where you've got one triangle of a stone slotting into another triangle of a stone. How does that happen? Where did they get that technology from? How did that come about? One doesn't know, yet still it's washed out, and there's a technology in front of us. You go onto the internet and you look at old archaeology, and you'll see these archaeological finds, which are absolutely absurd for our civilization to understand. There's a temple in Cambodia where they have a huge chariot type of thing, where the wheel and the axles are like as if they were wheels and axles of a car. Yet still, it's an old ancient monument, and nobody can explain it. What technology was used to create that axle and that wheel on that huge monument of a chariot. And
People have no explanation. But this is the very thing. Afalam takunu taqilun. What? You don't see this? You don't understand from this? That a whole civilization, which was of that peak of technology, there's nothing to be found about it other than just the monuments of it. What's happened to it? That's the ibrat. That is the awareness. That is the realization, the seeing and the learning that we have to go through to understand. Don't think that it's just happening out of the blue. This is the whole thing about what the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means, the signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are that same example of people who saw and realized and followed, and those who did not see and did not realize and did not follow. And that's why you see, for example, there's a story about Hazrat Shu'aib. I might have mentioned it here before, but still it's important in this conversation. That Hazrat Shu'aib was a prophet who produced the first person to create the scales, like the two plates where you have chains, those types of scales. He was the first person to create that. Why? Because in his time, the people who lived around his time in that kingdom where he was a part of, he had announced his nabuwwat there. These people used to cheat each other. They used to give vegetable and take more and give less. So there was a want to create a system by which they would not cheat each other. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to create something which would help mankind to mend its ways. And at that time, there were people who believed in Hazrat Shu'aib as well. They recognized that he was a prophet, but there were also people who did not recognize him as a prophet. So what happened in those days was Hazrat Shu'aib created these scales, and the vizier of the time took these scales to the king of the kingdom, whoever it was at that time, and said, look, Shu'aib's created this thing to create stability in the community. What do you think about it? The king said, oh, take it away. I don't want to know anything about it. Let them fight with themselves. As long as I'm comfortable in controlling them, that's fine for me. So that vizier just threw that away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed Hazrat Shu'aib to tell the people in that kingdom that soon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to throw his adab, his wrath on the people for their behavior in the community. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's adab came, and every single people in that, every single person in that society was wiped out, both his supporters and those who were not his supporters. So Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam was asked, salawat, why was this? It's not fair, is it? I mean, those who are Hazrat Shu'aib's supporters, surely they should have been pardoned, whilst others who did not believe in him, let them perish. But why did God make all perish? And this is the answer what our sixth Imam said, was because those people who were followers of Hazrat Shu'aib knew that others were cheating, yet still they did not do anything to stop that cheating. In others, they did not do Amal bil Ma'ruf. They did not do that, their role. You know, we think Amal bil Ma'ruf is a seventh and the eighth item in our necessities. We'll do the salat, we'll do the song, we'll do all these things which are important. We might think about it if we have to be asked to go for jihad, but that's the eighth and the ninth. So no, they're not stages. They are part and parcel of the total behavior. As you have to do namaz, as you have to do salat, you have to do amal bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. As you have to, but what do our communities do? Even when it comes to tawalla and tabara, they know a lot of tabara, but they don't know how to do tawalla. And this is the whole understanding of how we misunderstand our responsibility. It's not one or the other; it's all together. That's quite poetic. I didn't know that. It's all together. We have to make sure that it's done all together. All the 10 items that has been identified for us has to be there. So when we look at this ayat, which says, Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam an la ta'budu shaitan. And then the important thing is that ahad which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for us. That ahad is, as I was trying to explain to you last week, that ahad is based on the Quran, because the Quran is that tool of agreement. And as I said again, just a quick recap, that we mentioned the first few ayats of Surah Alif Lam Mim, Surah Baqarah, in which we said Alif Lam Mim, Zalikal Kitabu la rayba bihi fihi. Alif Lam Mim, Zalikal Kitabu la rayba fihi hudan lil muttaqin. That this is the hidayat for the muttaqeen. And then we said, other than just being the hidayat for the muttaqeen, we then also said that if we really and truly want to be those who are the guided muttaqeen, then we have to see who the Almighty has said is that light of hidayat for us. And we've learned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's prophet said that innal Hussein misbahul huda, that Hussein is the light of guidance. So if we understand these things, then we're not just commemorating Muharram, but we're in fact seeing that how Yazid tried to switch off that light of Imam Hussein, how Yazid tried to switch off that light of Hidayat. But whilst we commemorate, and today we are on the day of Arbaeen, which inshallah we'll talk about it a little bit, whilst we recognize Imam Hussein to be the light of our Hidayat, we don't recognize how to use that lantern of guidance. And that lantern of guidance is via the Quran, as we said. But sadly, whilst we commemorate Imam Hussein's shahadat, whilst we commemorate how Imam Hussein's light was being, or how Yazid tried to switch off that light, we ourselves, or the Muslims themselves, have become a tool by which this light of Hidayat, in other words, not Imam Hussein, but the Quran is switched off in front of us. There's an ayat in the Quran, ayat of ayat number 30 of Surah 25, Surah Furqan, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that say the Holy Prophet is asking the Holy Prophet to say, وَقَالَ Rasul, the Holy Prophet will say, قَالَ Rasul, Ya Rabbi, oh my God, إِنِّي قَوْمِ اتَّخَذَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Nabi will say, oh my God, my people have taken this Quran as they have neglected the Quran, in other words, as a negligent book, as an irrelevant book, as a forgotten book, a book to which they do not affiliate. And in other words, the word mahjur is a very heavy word, mahjur. Mahjur means one who intentionally neglects the use of something, who has forsaken the use of a particular thing. It is known as a person who's mahjur. He has forsaken that thing, in relation to its use. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Prophet is going to say, he says in Surah Furqan, which is the 25th Surah of the Quran, ayat number 30, he says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ, the Rasul, the Holy Prophet will say, or the Holy Prophet said, Ya Rabbi, oh my God, inna qawmi, for sure my people, inna qawmi ittakhadhu, for sure my people have forsaken Hazal Quran mahjuran, have taken this book as a forsaken book. Now that's very important as a claim for us, because we as Shias of the Holy Prophet say that yes, we have a light, Misbah al-Huda, which is our third Imam, Imam Hussein al-Islam, and he's the light of our guidance for us. In other words, he's that individual who will carry that ahad that mankind has made mankind has made through Hazrat Adam. So he was given that responsibility to carry that light, but his grandfather is saying that his own people would be mahjur with the Quran. Why? Why will that happen? That's because not only are those who were the enemies of Imam Hussein, because as I said to you, when on the battlefield of Karbala, these people themselves said takbir, these people were hafiz of Quran, these people were prayers. In fact, when the Holy Imam did his salat of Ashura, day of Ashura, they attacked him, saying that this salat is of no use, it will not go to God. In other words, they themselves felt that they were sophisticated Muslims who were fighting against this downtrodden, irrelevant entity of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. This is how they were interpreting it. In other words, what was part of the Quran, they had forsaken it and did not realize what the Quran was guiding them towards, yet still they were thinking Yazid is their guidance. Salawat. But what's really interesting is, whilst we're talking about this forsaking of the Quran, there's a lovely tradition from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Salawat. He says, on the day of judgment, innahu qala, in other words, the holy sixth Imam is saying, innahu qala, salasatun yashkuna ila Allah azza wa jal, that there will be three things on the day of judgment who will complain to the Almighty. There are three things that sixth Imam is saying, that on the day of judgment they will complain to the Almighty. The word yashku, shikayat, shikwa,
that they will complain to the Holy Prophet, the Almighty. Three things will complain to the Almighty. What are these three things? Masjidun kharabun la yasla fihi ahlahu. That the masjid will complain to the Almighty that that I was left empty and nobody came in me to pray. I was left empty to deteriorate. Kharabun. I was left empty to deteriorate, to be left as a demolished item, kharab. I was left as a kharaba, and nobody came to pray in me. And this is a very important thing for us who are part and parcel of these institutions, that now we have taken a burden on our shoulders. If we leave these institutions to deteriorate and rot, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be complained upon us by these properties, by these premises, by these gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled us to generate on the day of judgment, saying, look, I was here for the community. I was here 4 walls for the community. Why didn't the community come and make use of me? And these buildings would complain. I mean, there's a saying a saying which a lot of asatid of architecture use. They say that if you build a house, make sure you don't build a house in which it is beyond your own necessity. For those places in your home which are beyond your necessity, in other words, you need 3 rooms in your house and you build a house of 6 rooms, those other 3 rooms would complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I was left empty whilst there were people lying around in the streets. Don't take it lightly that there's nothing that connects us with these physical entities. These physical commodities will complain. There's the book by Imam, the book by Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, salawat. Risalatul Huquq. In other words, that book of treaties of rights. He mentions 56 rights of 56 things, from material to non-material, from the prisoner to the prisoner guard. They all have rights. Whilst you're a prisoner, you have no right to go and kick the hell out of the prisoner guard. He has his own responsibilities. In the same manner that the prisoner guard has no right to abuse the prisoner. In the same manner, your eyes do not have a right to see something which is not mahram to it. Your ears have no right to listen to ghibat. Your mouth has no right to do ghibat. Your hands have no right to steal, take somebody else's rights away. Your rights have no right to go to places which are haram for your body to be taken. All these things would reply on the day of judgment that I was abused. And in that same manner, the buildings would complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I was abused, in the sense I was built beyond the needs of this individual. And if we do not use the building that we have to teach our children, to raise our next generation, then dump it. But don't take this burden on your shoulders that on the day of judgment, these walls will crumble on you saying, I was there, why didn't this person use my facilities? So that's very important to understand. The masjid will complain. We are the kind of places of ibadat. We have anoint ourselves with this definition that we will allow people to do their salat here, we will allow people to do their majlis there, we'll allow people to do, everything that is ibadat. While still we do not support its existence, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be, first application of shikayat will be coming from the masjid, saying that I was here, but I was not used by the community for which I was here. The second one, and this becomes even more important. You're laughing because you know this tradition. The second one, and this is not putting my union ahead of everybody. It says the second one is an alim who is living amongst the juhala. In other words, an alim who is ready to teach, but the public do not use the opportunity to have use of his knowledge. They do not have that privilege of having a learned entity in amongst them. Yet still, this is the sad thing, yet still our communities would be reluctant to put people on the stage who are ulama, but they will keep people on the stage who define themselves as allamas, but they don't even know the meaning of alam, let alone be allamas. They don't even become the standards of the community, let alone be the allamas of the community. The allama is a superlative degree status. Superlative degree means something like good and best, good and best, or something which is higher than the previous category, in others, previous attribute. So if something is an alim, then the allama is recognized as someone who is even more of an alim. But then we get people who can't even recite the Quranic ayats, let alone the Quranic ayats. We know that they are cursing entities within the Islamic Ummah. I don't want to hide from names, but for the last 2 years, we've had this gentleman called Allama Alvi. Allama means nothing in front of that individual's name when he's creating such great, outrageous conflicts amongst the Muslim Ummah. Last year, he created a huge hoo-ha in Pakistan and legged it over here and started giving lectures in organizations over here. In fact, one of your neighboring organizations invited him once. Why? Why are we defining cursed people to be allamas when they're not allamas? Allama is a definition, and that's why this ayat is saying, this hadith is saying, that the alim ad-din amongst your community will complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whilst I was here, I was not being given the opportunity, or I was not being made use of, but ignorant people who were johala of the community, they were being defined as the allama of the communities. So the ulama of the community will have shikwa in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is a fact. Again, I use an example. 2 years back, and in fact, the year before as well, there's a place in Lahore called the Qasr Batul. And these people were announcing that as of now, we will announce that we have bari, we do bara'at from Maraji. We don't want to know anything about Majlis Taqleed. Who are you as an ignorant member of the community to say that you don't want to have anything to do with people who spend 60, 70, 80 years of their life learning about Islam? Yet these people in Pakistan, they wanted to announce a bara'at from the ulama of the community. But alhamdulillah, ulama of the community fought it off and showed to the community that these people are ignorant. So the second entity which will complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first is the masjid, the property where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message is nurtured. The second is the ulama who develop the nurturing of that message. And the third is this. Mus'afun mu'allaqun qad waqa'a alayhi ghubarun la yuqrahu fihi. The third will be that book on which has gathered dust, and nobody recites from it. The third will be that book on which dust will gather and nobody will recite from it. Another third will be the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ahad, that book of agreement, that covenant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used as the physical connection between us. Because as I said to you last week, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not come like Hazrat Isa and make that connection with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this book first in Lawh Mahfuz, and second in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Nabi's heart as the book of communication between himself and mankind. So that Hazrat Isa doesn't have to come physically, but Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, salawat, will be that connection of that book and the people. So once that book and the people is created, then we know how that connection is to go. That connection means that the Holy Prophet is saying that my people have ignored the book. My people have done mahjur with the book. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has entrusted me with the book, which I am exposing to people, but they are not making any use of that book because that book has become mahjur in front of them. So you could see this hadith from the Holy Imam is saying the three most important entities in our existence: the place of ibadat, those who communicate that ibadat to people, and that contact of ahad between mankind and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these three things will be complaining to Allah. Can I have a glass of water, please? Salawat. So you see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said it through this. Pani to a glass chahiye to usme. Salawat. You see, Quran has made it clear that every day you have a responsibility to make contact with God. Every day we make contact with God if we understand our responsibility that we have created with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is every day we are expected to do salat. Every day we make contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Surah Hamd and through the other surah that we are meant to be reciting. Now, what's important is to understand. What is important to understand is that Surah Hamd is an interesting surah. I mean, I'm not selecting one as being more interesting than any other surahs, but this has its own interest of its own. You see, Surah Hamd is the only surah in the Quran which is being used as a means to enable mankind to communicate with God. Whilst all the other surahs are God connecting with mankind. Of course, there are other aspects in other surahs which give mankind the opportunity, in a way. We have that dua which Hazrat Ibrahim was taught, Rabbana Bismillah Rahman Rahim, Rabbana Atina Fid Dunya Hasana wa Fil Akhirati Hasana. This is a connection between yourself and God. But Surah Hamd is the only surah in the Quran which is a communication between mankind and God. In other words, the starting point is from mankind. Ehdina Sirat. And then of course, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. All these words in there are the words which an individual with his sincerity and his ikhlas is being given the opportunity to create that connectivity with God direct. And that's something which is a tool of confirming that ahad with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah has said, I have made an agreement with you. When Allah has made an agreement with you, of course, in an agreement is two-way. Agreement is between he to whom the agreement is connected and he by whom the agreement is initiated. So this ahad is two-way. Now, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I have made, remember that ahad, O children of Adam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made his own commitments as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that if you follow my command, then the doors of heaven are open for mankind. These are all those commitments from Allah. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then expects something in return. And that is that ability to connect with him. And of course, we will find that whenever we want to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shaitan is going to come in the middle. Well, as the ayat says, in that do not worship. Worship me. Do not worship the shaitan. And of course, in where it says, shaitan, that don't worship the shaitan. Now, of course, whenever we want to do our ibadat with Allah, shaitan is going to come in between. He's going to come in between. When the moment we say Allahu Akbar, instead of reciting the first hamd, we remember where the 50 pound was dropped. And we remember where, all those shaitanic distancing you from the ibadat come into it. Every time, the one of the most important thing, and this is something which relates, like last week, as I said to you, reciting the Quran has 4 thawab. But doing the wudu before recitation is also full of thawab. We forget sometimes. The moment you're doing thawab, you are distancing the shaitan. The moment you are doing wudu, you're distancing the shaitan. There's a lovely tradition, at least an interpretation of why wudu should be done, by Syed Mutahhari. I don't know if anybody knows. I'm sure you lot know who Syed Mutahhari is. Salawat. But just for our younger people, Syed Mutahhari was a very senior alim ad-din scholar during the time of the Shah, and of course after Imam Khomeini. He was a very important force of guidance for the general public, and he was martyred at the hands of people who were anti-Islamic Republic of Iran and anti-Imam. Now, Syed Mutahhari says something really beautiful about wudu. He says, wudu has certain principles. If you follow those principles, there's no way that after those principles have been applied, that whatever you want to do, shaitan will come in your way. Shaitan will not come in your way. Those few principles of wudu, if you recognize them and you do them with those intentions, there's no way that the shaitan would come between you and what you want to do. He says, when you wash your hands, because of course there are only certain things which are wajib of the wudu, but some are mustahab. Washing of the hands is not wajib of the wudu to start with. The wajib of the wudu is the face and the arms and the head. These are, and the massa of the foot. These are the wajibat of the wudu. The rest are mustahabat, which you perform because you want to get more thawab from it.
But you see, he says, remember, there's certain things of the wudu that if you wash your hands, you should think in your mind that I'm washing my hands, that between now, when I'm washing my hands, till the next time I need to wash my hands again, I will not touch anything haram. Then he says, when you wash your face, when you wash your mouth, you say to yourself that between this time when I'm washing my mouth till the next time I'm going to wash my mouth, in other words, the wudu becomes again wajib, I will not say anything haram. If I wash my face between this time and the next time, I will not see anything haram. When I do massa of my head, I will not think anything haram. And finally, when I do my massa of my feet, I will not walk anywhere where there's haram. If we can see those principles of the wudu in our behavior, then there is no way, because the moment we want to walk somewhere where the shaitan wants to take us, we will be in the state of wudu, which will say that you don't need to walk anywhere because your wudu is walking you towards Allah and not towards shaitan. If you want to see something which is not mahram to you, your eyes will say that your face has been washed by wudu, which protects you from seeing anything not mahram. If you want to do ribat, your mouth, or if you want to swear, your mouth will say that you've just been washed for your wudu, or you're in a state of wudu with this mouth. How dare you say anything which is un-Islamic? So those principles of wudu, Shaykh Mutahir calls up in our understanding. That if those principles of wudu are understood in their entirety, then there's no way that the shaitan will. And that's why it's said that wudu is not just important that if there's a next salat that you're ready for salat, or if you need to recite the Quran, you're ready for Quran, you can touch the Quran because you're in a state of wudu. The wudu is to make sure that that's why when we look at when the ayat says and not abudu shaitan, that do not worship shaitan. When you're in the state of wudu, you're always protecting yourself from walking into the path of God, shaitan's ibadat. Protected yourself. That because, as I said to you last week, ibadat for shaitan is disobedience to Allah. And if you're in a state of wudu, which has been created to be obedient to everything that Allah expects from you, then there is no room for disobedience to Allah and satisfying shaitan's ibadat. And that's why Allah says, then that's why Allah says in Innahu lakum aduwwu mubin, that He's your enemy. Na'buduni hadha siratan mustaqim. For worship me, for I am that straight path. So when you're always in the state of wudu, you're always in the state of ibadat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just having your prayer mat out, but always be in a state such that everything that you do, the moment you see something which is now mahram and you condemn yourself for being in that position to see na mahram, then immediately you're doing Allah's ibadat. So that's ibadat. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. And that's why Mawla Ali says in one of his sayings, salawat. Mawla Ali says in Najib Balagha, he says, Innahu fi shifa'un. For in the Quran, there is some treatment, there's some, what should I say, there's an element of protection. There's shifa'at in this recitation of Quran. Min akbar da'ah, from major illnesses. That there's shafa'at, there is a treatment for many illnesses. Of course, illnesses we see as, we fall sick or somebody catches COVID and passes away. These are not illnesses. These are physical illnesses. But the illnesses which our Mawla talks about. He says there is shafa'at in the recitation of the Quran from great illnesses. What are those great illnesses? Kufr. Kufr is a great illness. Nifaq, hypocrisy, is a great illness. Going astray, ghayun, and zalal are great illnesses. In other words, all those spiritual diminishing states of our existence are major illnesses. Not just the physical illnesses that we see outside, people falling dead. Yes, these are going to happen. But those illnesses which create a illness for our hereafter is what Mawla is concerned about. That if you genuinely connect with the Quran, then the Quran has that major halo of protection for mankind. And if that halo of protection exists, then the inner illnesses will protect you from the outer illnesses. For when you talk about having the strength of mankind's system falling apart, is because sometimes people say that if you look at people who suffer from diabetes, one of the reasons the doctors say is that diabetes is hypotension diabetes. Most of the diabetes is defined as hypertension. These tensions are consequences of uncontrolled inner selves. Yes, they are outer issues, but if you control your inner selves, there will be very little thing to be tensioned about outside. But no, we are unable to control hatred. We are unable to control our desires. A human being has four major faculties. What time are we? We're going on, 10, 15 minutes? Okay. If you look at mankind has four major faculties, strengths they're called. Quwwat. Mankind has four major strengths. Quwwat wahmiya, quwwat zahniya, quwwat aqliya, and quwwat shahwiya. These four attributes of strength, they have their own application to human behavior. You've got, for example, the quwwat shahwiya is called the faculty of desires. Quwwat aqliya is the faculty of intellect thinking. Quwwat zahniya is the faculty of imagination. Quwwat wahmiya is the faculty of not in imagination, a faculty of imagination. These four faculties are such that they enable the construction of a human behavior. Now, if you look at, let's say, just two faculties of shahwiya and aqliya. Shahwiya means quwwat, that faculty of desire. And desire doesn't necessarily mean carnal desires, but like, for example, desire for money, desire for position, desire for various things. These are defined as shahwat. These are defined as excessive desires. And aqliya, the quwwat aqliya, is that intellectual faculty. Now, if we look at a particular event which took place regarding Mawla Ali, was the composition of all these four faculties put together in a controlled existence. For example, the two faculties I wanted to bring to our attention regarding Mawla Ali is quwwat shahwiya and quwwat aqliya. Mawla Ali is about to kill someone in a battlefront. The person spits at him. What does Mawla Ali do? He gets up and walks away. Look at his action. What would have happened if he killed him there and there? What part of his faculty would have come into existence? His quwwat shahwiya, that this man spat at me, he insulted me. My whole status has been put into question. That shahwat of me being something has been put into question. But quwwat aqliya, Mawla said this: control yourself. Put this thing back before you come back to kill him. But kill him for what? Not because of your shahwat for yourself, but your shahwat to bring Allah's command in the society. In other words, your desire to be obedient to Allah, not to be obedient to your desires. And Mawla walked away, killed his desires, came back and killed the enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is where full control of all these wahmiya. Imam never let his imagination run away with him. What would such and such a person do? What would he do? No. He looked, there's that example of this man who comes saying to the Khalifa of the time that the sword which Ali has is my sword. Mawla Ali said, okay. Mawla Ali didn't have witnesses, so he gave the sword to the individual. He didn't put that imaginary thing, this guy's a liar, where is he bringing the story from? No, he said that which is zahir, that which is apparent, that which is there in front of us, is that I don't have a witness to say this is my sword. So I'll give the sword. So Imam's imagination did not run away with him. He let that which is the rule of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be put into play. So you could see Imam was the encapsulation of all these quwwah, all these faculties. And if those faculties are put together, then you save yourself from dhalal, from errors. You save yourself from any type of insults that your inner body is trying to instigate for you in that public arena. If you control that inner self, you protected yourself from that public insult and public deterioration of your personal character, because you're fighting. As I said to you in last week's point, the point still holds today. that if you want to be a perfect, if you want to be a insan kamil, in other words, if you want to be a complete and perfect human being, then you do not endeavor to be a human being who wants to achieve perfection, because a perfect human being allows you to recognize your errors. But one who wants to be a perfection, wants to achieve perfection, he tries to deplete and defame his errors. So he doesn't deprive himself from achieving optimum. And that's why it's so important that we recognize that Quran is a tool of protecting you from disaster. And that's why the Quran further says in the 48th surah of the Quran, which is Surah Fatah, ayat number 10, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that never break your promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Faman nakatha, he who breaks his promise. فَإِنَّهُ يَنْكَثُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. He who breaks his promise for his own selves. In other words, to his own nafs, he's breaking the promise. He's not breaking it with anybody else. He's breaking it with himself. وَمَنْ أَوْفَى. And he who fulfills his ahad with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he will have an ajir azim, that he will have a very grand reward for maintaining that reward. And that is the important thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made sure that he has given us opportunities to fulfill that ahad that we as human beings have made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if that ahad is fulfilled, there's no way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would belittle us in front of the public. Because the ahad with Allah means even if you lose, you win. That's an important thing to understand. Because to fulfill, that's why I said, Insan al-Kamil, he will lose, and whilst he's losing, he's winning. Why? Because he's losing to keep Allah happy. And if he's winning to keep Allah happy. Not that if he's winning, he becomes arrogant, and if he's losing, he says, God, what have you done with me? Why have I suffered like this? No, the loss is with Allah, the win is with Allah. But if we don't understand that, then we don't understand what today we recited in Surah Arbaeen, or which we will recite in Surah Arbaeen. There's a saying in Surah Arbaeen, there's a bit in Surah Arbaeen, in which we say, Wa ashhadu annaka wafaytu bi ahdillah, in which it says, I give witness that you have fulfilled your promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa ashhadu, I bear witness, annaka, that you for sure, wafaytu, have fulfilled bi ahdillah, that promise you made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see that particularly when we are now commemorating, or at the day when we finish the 40 days of commemoration of Imam Hussein's Shahadat, that in reality, the sisters of our community should feel honored that without a lady at the time of Imam Hussein, Karbala might have stopped at the time of Ashura. For if it wasn't for Hazrat Zainab Salamullah Alayha, that continuation, because Hazrat Zainab Salamullah Alayha is known as Sharikatul Hussein, she who is part and parcel of Imam Hussein's movement. And there's a lovely statement before we go into the Masaib. Saddam, when he martyred Syed Sadr, he made a very profound statement. He said, I will not do that same mistake that Yazid did with Zainab. Why? What was he saying? That I will not make that same mistake that Yazid made with Zainab. The mistake was, or what he did not do, is that he executed with Syed Sadr, Syed Muhammad Baqir Sadr, he executed his sister Bintul Huda. And he said, I will not make that same mistake that Yazid made in releasing Zainab by releasing Bintul Huda. Look at that relationship. Even the enemies of Islam recognize what a messenger Hazrat Zainab Salamullah Alayha was. But this message was started not on the day of Ashura, but this message was started on the 26th, 27th
of Rajab, when Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha, on the night, on the day when they're leaving on the 28th of Rajab from Karbala, from Medina, that she sees and people see that whilst she is coming out of the house to mount the camels, a reporter reports that I saw that everybody was asked to move away from near the caravan of the Bani Hashim. And whilst I was moving away, I saw this light of a young man standing on his face showing above Imam Hussein. And then suddenly I was told that go even further away, for ladies are coming. And it is said that other ladies were surrounding two ladies as they came. And when they came, this young man put himself down on the ground, and these two ladies mounted the camels after standing on him or being helped up to the camel. I asked the people, who are these people? And I was told that the young man who is sitting on the ground putting these ladies up on the camels is Abbas, and the two ladies are Zainab and Kulthum. What a starting point, where they left Medina in a caravan which was mounted and covered politely, and the people's carriers on the camels were covered in proper cloth, and they were carrying green alams. But look at the events when the whole story changes to the day of Ashura, when all the men were killed and the ladies were left without their men. Even if you look at all those women who were so important in the whole trip, one of the ladies is the lady who is known as Lady Rubab. For if you look at her, she is a lady who's lost her husband in Karbala, lost her son in Karbala, and her daughter in the zindan, in the prison of Sham. It is said that when Imam Hussein was the last one left on the battlefield of Karbala, he calls out, Hal min nas yansurna. It is said that in the caravan, suddenly there is a noise of women crying. Imam Hussein comes to the caravan and he sees that Hazrat Zainab, he asks Hazrat Zainab, why are we all crying? Are the ladies crying? She says, when you said, Hal min nas yansurna, Ali Asghar fell out of his cot as if to say, don't worry, I am over here. Imam Hussein went and took Ali Asghar and about to take him out. It is reported that Hazrat Bibi Rubab called Imam Hussein and said, let me take Ali Asghar. Imam Hussein said, why don't you want him to come with me to the battlefront? She said, no, let me just have him for a few minutes. She took him to the back or into the caravan and she brought him all well dressed, with all made up and ready. Hazrat Rubab says, I want Ali Asghar to go out to the battlefront like his uncle Abbas, all prepared to face the enemy. Ali Asghar is taken. Ali Asghar's message was much more bigger than Imam's son Ali Akbar's message, much more bigger than Hazrat Abbas's. Why? Because the whole of the Yazid's army started trembling by just looking at Ali Asghar, wiping his tongue about his lips, almost to say, you can't even spare me a glass of water or drop of water. Hazrat Abbas went for water. This child didn't even need to go for water, just his indication that he wanted water demonstrated to the enemies of Imam Hussein that they needed to kill this child a lot more faster than they could kill Hazrat Abbas. But it's said that when the arrow was fired by Hurmula, it is said that 3 times Hurmula missed his target, or the arrows fell. So his friend says to him, you are the best person who can fire the arrow. He says, yes, I want to fire the arrow, but every time I raise my arrow to fire the arrow, I see that the curtains of the caravan are being lifted, as if it's a mother there looking at her child about to be slaughtered. Every time I saw that, it said that Hurmula eventually fired that arrow which cut the neck of the Hazrat Ali Asghar in such a manner that the arrow, which was considered a 3-pronged arrow, hit the neck of the child, and the
child's neck was slain from side to side. This is what the ladies of Karbala. It is said that Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha, let's not deprive ourselves from shedding whatever tears we can shed on today, for this might be our last Arbaeen. This could be our last Arbaeen that we can condole our Bibi. If we are alive, inshallah, then next year we will be back to give our condolences to our Bibi. But if we're not, then let our tears be a sign of our blessing for her on the day of judgment. It is said that when Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha took the caravan from Karbala to Sham, from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, she was continuing that movement of Imam Hussein. It is said that on the day of Ashura, when all these shahadats took place, Hazrat Zainab took on the responsibility to be the Shaykhatul Hussein, to be part and parcel of Imam Hussein's movement. But today, on the day of Ashura, on the day of Arbaeen, we see that the events of Arbaeen opening in Sham, when Yazid says, I am ready to call Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam and says, I am ready to release you. Is there anything I can do? He said, I'll have to go to my auntie and find out if there's anything specific. She says, yes, we want a place to remember our Shohada. We want the tabarukat, the items which are properties of our Shohada, and we need someone to take us safely back to Medina. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam took this message. Yazid said, yes, we will give you all the things, but we will give you all the things. And a place was given where the first majlis of Imam Hussein was held by Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha. Not just the majlis in Kaaba and Sham, but the very fact, all the commemorations from Sham from Karbala to Kufa to Sham was that continuation of the message. It is said that when all the items were brought, the heads of all the shuhada were brought. They were all brought in trays where all the ladies, Hazrat Rubab took the head of Ali Azra, Hazrat Farwa took the heads of Qasim, and all the other ladies took the heads of all the children and all the Shohada. It is said that 2 little heads were left on one side. The ladies of Sham said, where is the mother of these 2 heads? Is she dead? Hazrat Zainab cried out, no, the mother of these 2 heads is not dead. It's just that she is commemorating the shahadat of her brother Hussein. It is said that the caravan moves from Sham, but before they're about to move, Yazid had prepared the caravans with flowery cloth around it. Hazrat Zainab, the moment she looked at it, said, no, remove all these colorful curtains, for we want to go in black. The moment the caravan started in black from Sham, it came to a juncture where it was a route from there to Medina to Karbala. Hazrat Zainab says, we don't want to go to Medina at the moment. I don't want to go and give my condolences to my grandfather. I don't want to go to give my condolences to my mother Fatima. I want to go and see my brother Hussein. She takes the route to Karbala. It is said that on the day when they reached there, on the day of Arbaeen, before that, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari had already got there. Jabir ibn Ansari was a blind Sahaba of the Holy Prophet. He said he was taken there by his colleague Atiyah. When they got to Karbala, Abdullah, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari says to his friend, he says, take me to Imam Hussein's grave. His friend Atiyah says, I've taken you to the graves, but I can't see which is Imam Hussein's grave. He says, just put me in the middle of all the graves. He stands there and he says, Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum ya ibna Rasulillah. When he says that, there's a voice which comes from a grave, says, Assalamu alaikum Jabir. Hazrat Jabir goes to that grave, recognizing, and he sits there crying. He cries and he cries until he faints. In his fainted situation, he sees Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein says to Jabir, Jabir, leave my grave at the moment. Jabir says, what have I done? In his sleep, he says to Imam Hussein, what have I done? Have I offended you? Imam Hussein says to his dream, Jabir, leave this place, for my sister Zainab is coming. For my sister Zainab is coming. At that moment, Atiyah wakes up Jabir. He says, Jabir, it looks like there's a group of people coming from a direction. I think it might be Yazid's army. But Jabir says, no, take me and near it to see who it is. Atiyah says, no, it's not Yazid's army, but there's a group of people with black banners. And in front of them is an old man. Is an old man. Jabir says, take me to him. Jabir goes to him. Obviously he can't see him. I asked Atiyah to talk to him. Atiyah says to Jabir, it's an old man with a broken back type of situation, white hair. Jabir says, who are you? He says, Imam Zain al-Abidin says, Uncle Jabir, it's Ali ibn al-Hussein. Hazrat Jabir says, why I've been told that you're like an old man. I've carried your father Hussein. I've carried your father. I've seen your father Hussein on the back of the Holy Prophet. How could it be that you're an old man? Hazrat Zain al-Abidin says, Ammu Jabir, Karbala was not a problem. The Kufa was not a problem. But the problems of Sham have made me broken. I've lost my sister in Sham. My mother, my aunties were taken in Sham without hijab. And Hazrat Zainab, she comes to Imam Hussein's grave and puts herself on Imam Hussein's grave and starts condoling Imam Hussein and telling him what she had experienced on this time. But when they were leaving Sham, the last story of Sham that we must remember is that story of Hazrat Rubab. For when they were about to leave the house, suddenly a lady said that Hazrat Rubab is missing. Hazrat Zainab says, I know where she'll be. They went to the prison of Sham again, and they saw Hazrat Rubab on the grave of Hazrat Zainab, Hazrat Sukaina, crying, what am I going to do going back to Medina, where I've left my daughter here in Sham and my husband and my son in Karbala. I pray that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us on the right path, protects us from evil, makes us practicing mu'mineen, that inshallah on the day of judgment we are ready. And when the 12th Imam appears, that we are ready to join him. And if we're not alive, that we train our next generation to join him. I pray that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects all Maraji, particularly Wilayatul Faqih, Ayatul Uzma, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, that inshallah we can be united under one command. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kulla waliyaka al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ih, fi hadhihi as-sa'ati wa fi kulli sa'a, waliyan wa hafidha wa qa'idan wa nasir. ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توأة وتمتعه فيها طويلة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. ماتم حسين. يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين ज़ैनब आ गई भाई ज़ैनब आ गई भाई लो जिंदान शाम से छोट कर ज़ैनब आ गई भाई ज़ैनब आ गई भाई लो जिंदान शाम से छूट कर ज़ैनब आ गई भाई ज़ैनब आ गई भाई لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر بعد تیرے ایسا لوٹا گھر، سر پہ نہ چھوڑی ایک کہ چادر، کھینچ لیا بیمار کا بستر، دیتی رہی میں دہائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے تاریکی رستے جانے، دشمن گھر سونے زیتانے، کرب و بلا کے بن میں نہ جانے کیسی شام تھی آئی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام، حسرت تو تھی جان خواہ دیتے اجازت گر یہ ستمگر، میت پر کچھ دیر ٹھہر کر رو لیتی ماں جائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زندان شام سے چھٹ کر کوڑے جب بیمار پہ برسے، روتے تھے ہم سب ہنستے تھے، حکم تیرا تھا ہم بے بس تھے جھیل گئے رسوائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام، چلتے چلتے شام جو پہنچے، کچھ مت پوچھو بھیا ہم سے، موت تھی بہتر اس جینے سے، موت مگر نہ آئی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے، ہائے میرا بیمار بھتیجا، پل پل خون کے آنسو رویا، کیا کرتی مجبور تھی بھیا، کچھ نہ بہن کر پائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زندان شام سے، غم سے پھٹا جاتا ہے کلیجا، جاگو برادر اٹھو بھیا، لے لو اس لاچار کا پرسا شام جسے چھوڑائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر زینب آ گئی بھائی، زینب آ گئی بھائی، لو زندان شام سے چھٹ کر، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، وہ عابد بیمار تھا، وہ عابد بیمار تھا، چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا، چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا، اور شام کا بازار تھا، اور شام کا بازار تھا، اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں، مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین، مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی، شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی، سینے پہ جو شاکے پلی، سینے پہ جو شاکے پلی، جس کی ابارن میں جلی، جس کی ابارن میں جلی، منہ پر تماچوں کے نشان، مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین، مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
متوجہ زیارت۔ السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا نبی اللہ، السلام علیک یا محمد ابن عبداللہ، السلام علیک یا خاتم النبیین سید المرسلین، احسن لک العزا فی ولدک الحسین علیہ السلام، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین علی ابن ابی طالب وصی رسول اللہ وخلیفتہ بلا فاس، السلام علیک یا فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا خدیجۃ الکبریٰ ام المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا ام البنین سلام اللہ علیہا، السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبی سید شباب الجنہ، السلام علیک یا ابا عبداللہ الحسین شہید بکربلا۔ Reciting Ziyarat Arbaeen from all Mu'mineen and Mu'minat for Risale Sawab for all our marhumins. السلام عليك يا ولي الله وحبيبه، السلام على خليل الله ونجيبه، السلام على صفي الله وابن صفيه، السلام على الحسين المظلوم الشهيد، السلام على أسير الكربات وقتيل العبرات، اللهم إني أشهد، اللهم إني أشهد أنه وليك وابن وليك وصفيك وابن صفيك الفائز بكرامتك، كرمته بالشهادة وحبوته بالسعادة واجتبيته بالطيب والولادة وجعلته سيدا من السادة وقائدا من القادة وزائدا من الزادة وأعطيته مواريث الأنبياء وجعلته حجة على خلقك من أوصياء، فعذر في الدعاء ومنها عن نصحها وبذل محجبته فيك ليستنقذ عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الضلالة، وقد توازر عليه من غرته الدنيا وباء حزه بألزل والأدنى، وشرى آخرته بالثمن أو أقسى أو قسي، وغطرس وتردى في حواه واستخطك واستخط نبيك، واتاع من عبادك أهل الشقاق والنفاق، وحملة أوزار المستوجبين النار، وجاهدتهم في صابرا محتسبا حتى سفك في طاعتك في طاعتك تقدمه واستبيح حريمه. اللهم فلعن الله لعنا وبيلا، وغذبهم عذابا عليما، وعذبهم عذابا عليما. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الأوصياء، أشهد أنك أمين الله وابن أمينه، عشت سعيدا ومضيت حميدا، ومت فقيدا مظلوما شهيدا، واشهد أن الله منجزا ما وعدك وملحقا من خذلك، واشهد أنك وفيت بعهد الله وجاهدت في سبيله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله من قتلك، ولعن الله من ظلمك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. اللهم إني أشهدك نبيا وليا لمن والاه، وعدوا لمن آداه، بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله. أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها، ولم تلبسك من مضلحمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين ومعقل المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الحادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد أن بكم مؤمنا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم، وأمري لأمركم متبع، ونصرتي لكم معدة، حتى بأذن الله يأذن الله لكم، فمعكم لا مع عدوكم. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم، آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا أختك زينب وأختك أم كلثوم وبنتك سكينة وفاطمة الصغرى ومولاتي فزة، صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي الباقر وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وباب الحوائج باب المراد موسى بن جعفر القادم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفينا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك يا أختك معصومة. السلام عليك يا ولد إمام تقي الجواد وإمام نقي الحادي وأبا القائم المهدي الإمام حسن العسكري. السلام عليك سيد محمد. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن وشريك القرآن وكعبة الإيمان وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك، وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك، وزهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكن أرضك توعا وتمتع فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على. Can you please recite 2 rakat for Ziyarat Arbaeen? And before that, let's recite Surah Fatiha for all our marhumins. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله.
I know you've all recited Fatiha, but today, 28th of September, 13 years ago, my father passed away. So if you can also read a special Fatiha for my dad, Syed Jafar Hussain Razvi, inshallah. اللهم صل